Here's a money fact that sounds impossible but is just math. Getting from $100,000 to 1 million can be far easier than getting your first 100,000. The first 100,000 can take a decade of grinding. The last 100,000 on the way to a million can arrive in under a year, almost on its own. Same amount of money, wildly different effort. Once you understand why, the entire game of building wealth changes. I am going to show you the exact math, the milestones that matter most, and why your brain fights you every step of the way. We will hit 3 magic numbers: your first 100,000, a surprising inflection point around 650,000, and the $1 million mark itself. Quick note, every number here uses assumptions about returns that are not guaranteed, and this is general education, not financial advice. Treat it as the math, not a promise. Because once one quiet force kicks in, the math stops feeling like saving and starts feeling like magic. But first, why is that first 100,000 so brutally hard? Almost everyone who has built wealth says the same thing. The first 100,000 is the hardest part by far. Early on, your money is too small to grow much on its own. Almost every dollar of progress comes from your own savings, not from investment growth. If you have $1,000 invested, even a great year only adds 100. It feels like nothing, so it is easy to believe investing does not work. So the journey to your first 100,000 is mostly grind, cutting costs, saving consistently, and staying patient while the growth is still invisible. This is exactly where most people give up. The rewards feel too small for the effort, and they cash out or stop entirely. But hitting that first 100,000 is the hardest and most important milestone you will ever cross, because of what happens next. What happens next has a name, and it is the most powerful force in finance. That force is compound growth. Your money earns money, and then that money earns money too. It is a snowball. Each year your gains get added to your pile, so next year you earn growth on a bigger and bigger base. This is why wealth does not grow in a straight line. It grows in a curve that starts almost flat, then bends sharply upward. A handy shortcut is the rule of 72. Divide 72 by your yearly return to estimate how long your money takes to double. At a historical style average of around 10% a year, money doubles roughly every 7 years. That doubling is where the magic hides. Important, 10% is a long-term historical average, not a promise. Real returns bounce around wildly, and some years you lose money. So let us put real numbers on those doublings. Watch what doubling does once you reach $100,000, assuming that rough 10% average. 100,000 becomes 200,000 in about 7 years, even if you never added another dollar. Then 200 becomes 400,000 in the next 7, the same doubling, but now it added 200,000 instead of 1. 400 becomes 800,000, adding 400,000 in one doubling. The dollars are exploding while the percentage stays the same. From your first 100,000, reaching a million this way takes roughly 24 years with no new contributions, and far less if you keep investing. Notice the pattern. Each doubling takes the same time, but moves a far bigger pile. That is the whole secret in one picture. And it means each milestone arrives with less and less effort from you. Here is the part that breaks people's brains. Each 100,000 comes faster than the one before it. Your first 100,000 might take 10 or more years of disciplined saving, because growth was barely helping. But by the time you have a few 100,000, growth is adding tens of thousands a year on its own. The market starts doing your saving for you. Your monthly contributions, once the entire engine, slowly become a small topping on a much bigger fire. By the end, going from 900,000 to a million can happen in a single good year of growth, with you barely lifting a finger. So the first 100,000 is the hardest you will ever work for money. After that, your money increasingly works for you. Which is why crossing that first milestone changes you mentally, too. Hitting 100,000 does something powerful to your psychology, not just your balance. Suddenly a normal market year might add $10,000, as much as you used to save in a year. growth becomes visible and real. For the first time, you can clearly see the compounding working. That proof makes it far easier to stay patient and keep going. You start to think of yourself as an investor, not just a saver. The habit locks in because the results finally reward it. And momentum builds. The bigger the pile, the more obvious the growth, the more motivated you are to protect and feed it. That is why the first 100,000 is worth grinding for. It is the moment the math becomes believable and the journey gets easier. But there is an even bigger turning point most people have never heard of. Somewhere around $650,000, something remarkable happens for many people. At a rough 10%, $650,000 grows by about $65,000 in a single year, on its own. For most people, that yearly growth is now larger than the amount they could ever save from their salary. Your money is officially out-earning you. This is the real tipping point. From here, your portfolio is the main driver of your wealth, not your paycheck. It is the stage where financial freedom starts to feel real, because the engine is now bigger than the hand that built it. The exact number depends on your savings and returns, so 650,000 is an illustration, not a magic threshold. But the idea is very real. And from there, the famous million is closer than it looks. The $1 million mark is the dream number, but here is the twist that proves the whole point. Going from 1 million to 2 million is just one more doubling, roughly 7 years at our average, with little effort from you. That means your second million can arrive faster than your very first 100,000 did. The hard part was always the beginning. On the growth curve, this is where the line goes nearly vertical. The same patience that felt pointless early now pays enormous rewards. Each year now moves 6 figures purely from growth. The numbers feel surreal, but it is the exact same math from the very first dollar. The lesson is simple and powerful. The beginning is brutal, the end is explosive, and almost everyone quits before the explosive part. So why do so many people quit right before it gets good? Because our brains are wired for straight lines, and compounding is anything but straight. We expect steady, equal progress. So when the early years feel flat and slow, it feels broken, even though it is working perfectly. The hardest stretch is the long, boring middle, where the curve has not yet turned sharply upward and the excitement has worn off. Most people quit or get distracted right there, cashing out or chasing something flashier, and they reset the clock to zero. The investors who win are rarely the smartest. They are the ones who understood the curve and refused to quit during the slow part. Your real job is not to be brilliant. It is to stay in your seat long enough for the math to do what math always does. Nothing shows this better than comparing two people. Meet two investors, Amara and Ben, to see how powerful time really is. Amara invests a set amount every month for just 10 years in her 20s, then stops completely and never adds another dollar. Ben does nothing in his 20s, then invests that same amount every month for 30 years, 3 times as long as Amara. Here is the shock. Assuming the same returns, Amara often ends up with as much or more than Ben, despite investing for a third of the time. Her early money simply had more decades to compound. Ben could not outsave the head start that time gave her. Starting early beats starting big. The most valuable ingredient in this whole equation is not money, it is time. So what destroys this beautiful math? Usually one of a few mistakes. A handful of mistakes can quietly shatter the entire compounding machine. The biggest is cashing out early. Every time you spend the pile, you reset the snowball and lose all the future growth it would have created. Panic selling in a crash locks in losses and throws you off the curve, often right before the recovery that does the heavy lifting. High fees are a silent killer. A couple of % a year, compounded over decades, can quietly eat a huge slice of your final million. Chasing hype and jumping between hot stocks usually underperforms simply staying invested in something broad and boring. Most wealth is not lost to bad luck. It is lost to impatience, fear, and fees. Avoid those, and the math takes care of the rest. So what actually makes this work? The recipe is almost insultingly simple, which is exactly why it is so easy to ignore. Start as early as you possibly can, because time is the ingredient you can never get back. Invest consistently, automatically, through good times and bad, so you never have to rely on willpower or perfect timing. Keep your fees as low as possible, so the growth stays in your pocket instead of someone else's. Reinvest your gains and then leave it alone. The compounding only works if you let the snowball keep rolling. That is it. Start, stay consistent, keep costs low, and be patient. The math is not the hard part. The waiting is. Which brings us to the real challenge. Let me be completely honest with you about these numbers, because the math deserves the full truth. Every figure here assumed a steady 10% average. Real markets are wild. Some decades return far less, and there are long stretches of losses you must survive. $1 million decades from now will also buy far less than $1 million does today. It is still life-changing, but inflation quietly shrinks the prize. Your timeline, your savings, your returns, and your taxes all change these results. Treat the milestones as the shape of the journey, not exact predictions. And the biggest variable is not the market. It is you, whether you can stay invested through the boring middle and the scary crashes. The important part, I am not a financial advisor and this is not financial advice. It is education about how compounding behaves. For your own plan, do your own research and consider a qualified, fee-only fiduciary who must act in your interest. Because the real challenge was never the math. It was having the patience to let the math win. So here is the mind-bending math, in one place. Your first 100,000 is the hardest, built mostly from your own savings while growth is still small. After that, compounding doubles your money on a schedule, and each doubling moves a far bigger pile than the last. Around 650,000, your growth can outpace what you save, and your money starts out earning you. From $1 million, the second million arrives faster than your first 100,000 ever did. Starting early beats starting big, because time is the most powerful force in the entire equation. And the whole thing only works if you avoid cashing out, panic selling, and high fees. The beginning is brutal, the end is explosive, and patience is what carries you between the two. If you remember one thing, let it be this. The hardest part of building wealth is the very beginning, when it feels like nothing is working. That flat, frustrating early stretch is not failure. It is the launch pad, and almost everyone quits on it just before liftoff. You do not need a big salary to start this. You need to begin, stay consistent, and give the curve enough time to bend. As always, understand the basics first, how returns, fees, and compounding really work, before committing real money. The best day to start was years ago. The second best day is today, with whatever amount you can. So take one step this week, open the account, automate the first deposit, and let time start working for you. The math will blow your mind, but only if you stay in your seat long enough to watch it happen. If this changed how you see your money, you know what to do. Keep building, and I will see you in the next one.